All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unraveling one of history's absolute most baffling unsolved mysteries. We are looking at a case that has literally frustrated detectives, top-tier cryptographers, and amateur sleuths for generations. It all kicks off with a bizarre discovery on an Australian beach. A discovery that, at first glance seemed perfectly ordinary. But it very quickly spiraled into an absolute labyrinth of Cold War espionage, secret codes, and frankly, impossible biology. I want you to put yourself right in the detective's shoes for a second here. Just imagine being handed a puzzle that doesn't just refuse to be solved, but actually seems to grow more impossible the closer you look at it. It's like every single answer you find only breeds 10 more terrifying questions. Well, that is the very real reality of the Somerton Man. For over 70 decades, this man's secrets completely outlived him, mocking some of the greatest investigative minds in the world. So let's get into it. Part 1, the body on the beach. Okay, we're setting the scene on the morning of December 1st, 1948, on a beach in Adelaide. The body of an unidentified man is found resting against a seawall. Just a man, sitting motionless on the sand. But as the authorities approached, it became immediately clear that this was no ordinary tragedy. And the pacing of this investigation is really crucial to understand because it didn't all just happen at once. It starts with the discovery of the body, sure. But then, it takes months for authorities to discover a hidden pocket sewn into his trousers. And it takes even longer for a secret codebook to be uncovered in a random, completely unlocked car parked near that exact same beach. What started as a seemingly standard local discovery slowly and methodically spiraled into this massive global puzzle over the course of several months. And the evidence immediately confused local police because the crime scene was just a mass of contradictions. First off, this man was impeccably dressed in a full suit and tie. Keep in mind, this is December in Australia. It is blisteringly hot summer weather. Yet here he is, dressed for a crisp autumn evening. Second, the medical examiner noted he was in absolute peak physical condition. And most alarmingly, he had absolutely zero identification on him. No wallet, no money, nothing. He was an impeccably dressed, perfectly fit man, lounging on a sweltering beach with absolutely zero identity. Moving on to part 2, a trail of impossible clues. If the scene on the beach was weird, the actual forensic investigation was, well, downright chilling. Every single piece of evidence the police uncovered didn't help identify him. Instead, it just added a fresh, bizarre layer of anomaly to the whole case. Now, what's really interesting about this is the staggering level of premeditation used to erase this man's identity. Step 1, empty all pockets of ID and cash. Okay, you might think maybe it's just a robbery. But step 2, someone meticulously cut out all the name tags and brand labels from the clothing he was wearing. And step 3, even the spare clothes found much later in an abandoned suitcase at the local train station, all their labels were snipped out too. Someone went to extraordinary, painstaking lengths to ensure this man became a ghost. I mean, you don't just cut the brand tags out of your clothes unless you're deliberately trying to make yourself completely untraceable. So the crucial question is, how did this ghost actually die? Well, the medical evidence is a massive paradox. The autopsy showed his spleen was 3 times its normal size, alongside extensive internal bleeding in his stomach and kidneys. The coroner looked at this massive internal trauma and ruled definitively that it was a case of lethal poisoning. But here is the terrifying catch. Advanced toxicological tests found absolutely zero trace of any known chemical toxins or foreign poisons in his system. None. Literally none. It was as if a literal ghost poison had completely ravaged his internal organs and then just vanished without a microscopic trace. So months go by with zero leads, nothing, until an investigator finds a microscopic clue, a hidden fob pocket, deliberately sewn inside the dead man's trousers. And inside that pocket was a tiny rolled-up scrap of paper with just 2 words printed on it, Tamam Shud. This is a Persian phrase meaning ended or finished, and it was quickly identified as having been torn from the very last page of a highly rare poetry book called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Think about the sheer literary and psychological weight of that for a second. A man with no identity, killed by an untraceable poison, carrying a hidden piece of paper that simply says, finished. This brings us to part 3, codes and secret romances. Finding that scrap of paper triggered a frantic nationwide search to find the exact specific copy of the book it was torn from. And incredibly, they actually found it. A local man came forward claiming he found a rare copy of the rubaiyat tossed into the backseat of his unlocked car, which just so happened to be parked right near Somerton Beach on the night of the man's death. When police examined the back cover of this specific book under ultraviolet light, they found a sequence of 5 lines of capital letters. It appeared to be a secret cryptographic code. And just to underscore how incredibly complex this cipher is, to this very day the world's top military cryptographers and codebreakers have completely failed to break it. It remains entirely undeciphered. But wait, the code wasn't the only thing written in the back of that book. The police also found a secret, unlisted phone number belonging to a local nurse named Jessica Thompson, and she lived just a short walk from where the body was found. Now, when questioned by police, Jessica flat out claimed she did not know the Somerton Man. But here is the major tell. When authorities showed her a plaster cast, a death mask, made of the man's face, she grew incredibly nervous and practically fainted. Her extreme physical reaction completely betrayed her claim of ignorance. She absolutely knew him. And this builds into something even more personal. See, Jessica had a son named Robin. Years later, researchers began looking really closely at photographs and dental records, finding an astonishing genetic match between the unidentified Somerton Man and Jessica's son, Robin. They both shared 2 incredibly rare genetic anatomical traits, a very specific rare ear structure and an identical pattern of missing teeth. The statistical probability of this being just a coincidence? Staggeringly low. No way. This strongly implies that this unidentified man, carrying a secret code and an untraceable poison, had a secret romantic affair with Jessica. Which leads us to part 4, the 2022 DNA breakthrough. For decades, the trail went completely cold. The man was buried under a tombstone that simply read, "The Unknown Man." But the year 2022 changed everything. Researchers utilized highly advanced forensic genealogy. They actually managed to extract viable DNA from strands of hair that had been trapped in that original plaster death mask created way back in 1948. Through meticulous cross-referencing of genetic databases, they were finally able to give the Somerton Man his name back. And here he is. His true identity, Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne, Australia. Just take a moment to process the stark, jarring contrast here. We have this massive mystery involving untraceable ghost poisons, uncrackable microciphers, and hidden literary clues, and the victim turns out to be an ordinary electrical engineer. And that brings us to part 5, the ultimate unsolved mystery. Identifying Carl Webb didn't close the book. If anything, it made the underlying mysteries infinitely more terrifying. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate paradox of the whole case. On one hand, we have an ordinary electrical engineer from Melbourne who somehow ended up traveling all the way across the country. But on the other hand, we have undeniable evidence of a post-WW spy, an uncrackable microcipher, an untraceable military-grade toxin, and clothing labels meticulously removed to erase his identity. Why on earth would an ordinary electrical engineer go to such extreme, professional lengths to become a ghost only to die on a beach? This inevitably leads us to the spy hypothesis. You gotta remember the era here. This is 1948, the absolute height of intense post-WW2 early Cold War tensions. Was Carl Webb, with his technical engineering background, actually operating as an intelligence asset, or maybe a double agent? Was that uncrackable cipher in the rubaiyat containing secret formulas, or perhaps meeting coordinates for a dead drop? And what about the poison? Was he liquidated using a highly specialized military-grade toxin designed specifically to simulate natural organ or heart failure and leave zero trace for 1940s pathologists to find? So it all comes down to this final, massive question. If an ordinary engineer was executed flawlessly, his identity professionally erased, injected with a ghost poison, and left with an unbreakable code, what was his true mission? What was he really doing in Adelaide? And most importantly, who actually finished him? We may finally know his name, but the true enigma of the Somerton Man, the reality of what might honestly be history's most perfect crime, remains entirely unsolved. What do you think really happened on that beach? Keep questioning the evidence, and we'll see you in the next explainer.